Hey guys and gals, Kevin Bupp here. I've got some very exciting news I'd like to share with you before we jump into today's show. Now, after closing on Fund 4's first acquisition of a $50 million institutional grade mobile home park, we're adding a second irreplaceable piece of real estate to the portfolio, and it's coming into the fund with over $1.5 million of built-in equity for our investors day one. Now, when I say irreplaceable, I really do mean it. I mean, this is an affordable yet high-end waterfront mobile home park located in the Columbus, Ohio market. Quite literally, every single mobile home on this property is right on the lake, each with its very own personal boat dock, meaning a very high demand for affordable weekend getaway options, as well as year-round housing for working Americans. This is a true unicorn of a property, and you will not see another one like this come around again. It really is a one of a kind. A few other aspects worth noting. This park is producing stable and predictable cash flow day one. We're acquiring it with an excellent in-place Freddie Mac loan at a 3.3% interest rate for the next 8.5 years. This also includes a period of interest-only payments. Again, the simple supply and demand dynamics here are enough to get excited about. This is affordable lakefront real estate for both the working American families as well as folks looking to lock down a reasonably priced waterfront escape. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Visit investwithsunrise.com to register for our webinar and learn about all the wonderful aspects of this property going into Fund 4. Again, that's investwithsunrise.com. Now, let's get on to the show. Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is real estate investment expert Dustin Heiner. Now, Dustin is the founder of MasterPassiveIncome.com and the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. Being successfully unemployed at 37 years old by investing in real estate rental properties, he is now on a mission to help 1 million people to invest in real estate and achieve financial freedom. Now, Dustin started Master Passive Income from his home back in 2015 while being a full-time employee, married with 4 children, owning and operating 2 other businesses, and being a full-time investor. He's very passionate about his mission to help others become successfully unemployed and never need a job again. And so with that, guys, it's an honor to welcome Dustin Heiner to the show. Dustin, how you doing today?
What's up, Kevin? Hey, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really love 2 things. Number one, investing, because that allows me to have time to be able to do whatever I want in my life. And then number 2, podcasting. And so I love coming on podcasts and talking to great people like you and really just sharing with people how to invest in real estate just like you. So I really appreciate you having me on the show.
I'm excited for you to be here. I'm excited to learn about your story and dive a little deeper down that rabbit hole. So, but before we do, how about, let's back it up a little bit. I gave you that brief introduction. There's a lot of gaps there. So why don't you take a few minutes for those that aren't familiar with you and your story and just tell us a little bit more about yourself, Dustin.
Yeah, totally. So I'm a real estate investor. That's literally what I love to do, but I didn't start that way. I started like all of us start. So when we're young, we get told this story of this plan of life that we're supposed to do. You go to school, you get good grades, and you take those good grades, you go to college or university, and you try to get better grades, and you get in thousands of dollars into debt, and then you get a piece of paper called a degree, and then you go and you try to get a job and quote unquote work a career for 40 plus years of your life, and eventually retire when you're 65, 70 years old, and hopefully live on 40% of what you managed to save that entire time that you're working a just over broke job. I think JOB stands for just over broke because that's literally what you're living. Now I'm doing that exact same thing. And I've always been entrepreneurial, starting businesses and stuff. So I had a newspaper route when I was really little, I started a graphics and website design company, even a skateboard manufacturing business, and a convenience store. Like all these businesses started from the ground up, but I've always worked that regular job. Now, this is really what shoved me to make me invest in real estate. Number one, I bought my first rental property in 2006. And when I bought that property, I realized that this was the easiest money that I ever made because my property works for me. I don't actually work. So that was number one. But number 2, I also realized that I needed a regular risk-free job. So Kevin, I got the most risk-free job you could ever think of. I was in California and worked for local county government doing technology. California is not going away. Government's definitely not going away, and technology's not going away. So I'm working that same job, but I bought one rental property, and that rental property made me money. Well, I knew I needed to become an investor like full time, but you know how it happens. Life starts getting in the way, started having kids, but this is really what shoved me. So when my wife had our 4th child, I went on paternity leave. I had a regular sit down desk job at the local county government, and I went on paternity leave. And after about 2 weeks, I go back to work. And in that week, I go back to work, literally that same week on a Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon. I get a call from my boss's secretary. She says, Dustin, would you please come to the office? I said, sure. And I hung up the phone and I paused for a second. I thought, why in the world did they call me to the office? Like, this isn't normal. And I've seen plenty of movies. Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon is not a good sign to be called to the main boss's office. And I immediately shook it off, the idea of getting laid off. I said, there's no way I'm losing my job. Everything's great. I get raises all the time. My boss is saying I do a great job. Shook it off. Then I get up out of my chair and I walk down the hallway to my boss's office. Now, this hallway isn't very long. In fact, it's kind of short. But every single step that I take, it feels like the hallway gets longer and longer and longer. And it feels like my feet become lead bricks because the thought of losing my job starts weighing on me. Well, I get down the hallway and I turn the corner and I see my boss's door. His door is closed, and I see his secretary there, super sweet, nice old lady. She says, Dustin, would you please have a seat? And she's kind of sheepishly grinning at me, trying to console me with her eyes because she knows everything about what's going on. I know nothing about what's going on. So I take my seat and I start thinking about my life. If I get laid off right now, I start thinking, did I just waste my entire life following this plan I was told to follow? Well, then if I don't have my job, how am I going to feed my family? And does that make me a failure as a father, a failure as a husband, as a man trying to provide for his family? Well, right then and there, my hands started getting all clammy, my forehead get all sweaty because the nerves are just crushed me. Well, the door to my boss's office opens up, and out walks a coworker of mine with a piece of paper in her hands. She's noticeably distraught. She's not necessarily crying, but her world has been rocked. Well, my boss says, Dustin, would you please come to the office? I get up and I go in the office and I get laid off. And remember, this is the government. Nobody gets fired or laid off the government, but I did. And this is the reason why I tell the story. So you listening, I want you to take away these two things that I took away. So I went back to my desk and I sat down at my desk, just getting laid off. The first thing I realized was I need to get another job. I need to provide for my family. So I was really blessed, praise the Lord, to find another job in the same county. A different department wasn't having these issues. So check, got that. But the second thing, that in sitting in my chair, I realized that I need to make sure that this never, ever happens to me again. I need to make sure that nobody has the ability to take away my ability to feed my family. So right in there, I told myself, anytime anybody would ask me the question, Dustin, what do you do? You know, we always get that question. I would always reply, I work for the local county government. That's basically projecting the value that I put on myself is coming from my job. My value doesn't come from my job. My value comes from my God and from myself and from my family. So right then and there, I started telling every single person I am an investor. Now, it may so happen that 100% of my money comes from my job. That's my part-time job now. I'm a full-time investor. So quickly fast forward the story, started buying property after property after property, each one making me a minimum of $250 a month in passive income. Some are making $500, $600, $700, $800 a month in passive income. Eventually, after 30 plus properties, I realized I'm losing money working here. Last part of the story, I'll wrap it up. Last part of the story, I went to my new boss, good boss and all. I said, hey, boss, I'm laying you off. I gave him a layoff notice, and we were laughing jokingly. And he says, Dustin, what are you going to do? I said, I don't have to do anything. I own real estate that makes money for me. So I would walk to and from my job 1.5 miles every single day. I've done it 1,000 times. The last time, I felt like I was walking on clouds because I knew I would never, ever need a job again, as opposed to that walking down a short hallway that got longer and longer and longer. My feet felt like lead bricks because I realized that, and everybody, if you're listening to this, I want you to realize that you will never be paid what you are worth. And you're worth so much more than anybody could ever pay you. And this is how you'll know. Your boss is paying you just enough to keep you working without quitting, but not so much money that takes money out of their pocket. If they paid you what you're worth, they would actually go broke. So my suggestion is you figure out a way to invest in real estate or do some sort of business that you have your value putting into yourself. So I'll pause the story because you probably got plenty of questions.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And no, great story. I appreciate you sharing. I would love to, let's back up a little bit. Cause I mean, there's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. And I think first and foremost, you know, what comes to mind is just better understanding the framework of how you actually did it. You know, how you truly started buying one property after the next, after the next. I mean, when you're a W-2 employee and you're getting conventional loans, I mean, there's some restrictions on, you know, debt to income ratios. depending on what type of lending you're getting. I mean, they're going to be looking at your W-2 income in addition to the, the rental income that of the property you're buying. And so there's a lot more complexities with buying those smaller scale, those first couple of deals, especially when all you have is a W-2 income to kind of rely upon it. So would love to get a better understanding of exactly what that business plan looked like, and ultimately how you executed it over those first couple of years of kind of stacking those first couple of rental properties.
Yeah, totally. The financing is always something that we think about, like how we're going to finance the properties. And I'll tell you, I've literally used 16, I've counted them, 16 different ways to get creative in financing, from private money to hard money to I've even used signature loans from banks. We'll go through all that. But the process of getting started. So this was in 2006 when I first started investing. I went to one of those gurus that say, hey, we're coming to your, I was watching late night infomercial. We're coming to your town, a 2-hour seminar. We're going to do it for free. Come and learn how to invest in real estate. I'm like, that's great. So I go to the seminar. It was horrible. It was all hype and sales pitch. And they say, run to the back and no, give us a lot of money. I did that. I ran to the back and got suckered. But I took what little they told me and I did what they told me to do. And I did it wrong, meaning, sorry, what they told me was wrong. So I followed the process that was wrong. And my property manager started stealing from me within 6 months. I was living in California. In California, 2006, prices were so high. So I found an area in Ohio, out of state. And I just, the property manager bought the property, got a property manager. And my property manager started stealing from me within 6 months because I didn't know what I was doing. I was following those quote unquote gurus. But what I had to do was I had to figure out that people have done it in the past. There has to be a right way. Now, if you remember, I told from the very beginning, I've been entrepreneurial, starting businesses. I started many businesses. And I thought, instead of approaching this as just let me just buy a property and let other people do it, how about I create a business instead? So the way that I've now figured out how to do it, I've done this many times. In fact, I invested in Ohio, Texas, Arizona, Missouri, Tennessee, and there's one more state, Indiana as well. So I invest in all these different states, but what I do is I build the business in each one of these, every single little states. Now, getting to your question, and we'll get into the building business. I could definitely share how we do it. So we have other people, experts, do the work for us. But what I do is I also get the financing, and I use creative financing. Obviously, your W-2 job is one way to get financing, but then there's also many other ways. I'll quickly go through just a quick list: from private money, people that hard money lenders. I've used signature loans. You go into a bank and you say, can I get an unsecured line of credit? I've done that. I've even used home equity line of credit, cash out refinance, DSCR loans. And Kevin, everybody listen to this. This is an advanced strategy. I've even used credit cards. I've used a credit card because I knew my business. I would be able to buy a property with the credit card, or help me to buy a property with a credit card. And that business, that property would then make me money to pay off the credit card. And then after 3 years, the credit card was paid off, and then I own the house. So the big thing, that if you take away anything of what I just said, we need to build the business first before we buy any properties. The last thing you want is to buy a property. This is what I did. I bought a property, followed those quote unquote gurus, bought a property, spent thousands of dollars to fix it up, thousands of dollars to buy it, try to get a tenant. And I called the property manager, said, hey, property manager, I own this property. Would you manage it? And they say, no, I'll get shot there. I would not manage it. Well, that's no longer an asset. That's a liability. So what we do is we build the business, and then we have other people, from mortgage brokers, property managers, everybody in the business, they're experts doing the work for us.
And so just to get some clarity there, when you say you build the business, just better saying that framework. So you go into a market that you'd like to buy in, and you actually build out the framework of a property management company before you buy the first property, or help me better understand how you guys approach it. I'm missing a piece of it. I'm missing a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
my small pea brain. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. I'll explain it a little better, because we jumped right into the idea, or I started talking about the property manager. I do not want to build a property management company. I definitely don't want to do that. What I want to do, though, is I want to build the infrastructure so that my property, whatever property that I buy, will have the people running the business for me, from contractors, plumbers, roofers, contractors, property managers, home inspectors, all the people. That's what I talk about in building the business. Let me give you a quick example of what that would look like. So if you're going to start a convenience store, candy bars and soda machines and all that good stuff, well, you would not sign a lease on a location, open the doors, and set a box of candy bars in there on the ground and hope to run a business. You go out of business 2 seconds. What you would do though is you would build the business first. You get the gondolas; those are the shelving units. All the candy bars go on the countertops, cold storage, bank accounts, cash registers, employees, insurance, everything in the business before you buy any inventory. Same thing with real estate investing. We build the entire business, which I'll get to in just a second, and then we buy our inventory. Our properties are our inventory, because I said we're investors, but what it really comes down to is we are business owners, and what we own as a business is our inventory, is our properties. Same
Mhm.
thing with real estate investing. Just like the convenience store, we have to find first the area of the country that we want to invest. I love investing out of state, and out of state is so much better because where I live, it's really expensive. You can buy here and make money, but it's so much easier if you invest out of state. So we look for a location, a city that has good inventory that we would want to buy. Same type of homes that people either want to buy or rent: 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,200 to 1,700 square feet. Not too small that families don't want to live there. Not too big that there's extra walls to paint, toilets, and all that sort of stuff. And then once we find a city that has good inventory, which lots of inventory, then we pause on looking at any properties, and then we go right to our property manager. We make sure that we find somebody that's going to manage the property. Now, here's the best thing. If you call up a property manager, say, hey, property manager, I bought a property, will you manage it? And they say, no, I'll get shot there, so I won't manage it. Well, that's a liability now. How much better would it be if you build a business, you say, property manager, I'm looking to buy this property, will you manage it? If they say no, you don't buy it. You don't go through all the time and hassle and waste of money. If they say yes, though, you ask them, well, how much will it rent for? What is the vacancy factor? What's the clientele like? All those questions that are going to help you to know, should you buy the property? And then with that, you build out from inventory, city inventory, property managers. You need to have mortgage brokers, private money lenders, hard money lenders, contractors, inspectors. So basically, when I say building the business, we find the right experts in the city that are going to be doing all the work for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. Curious, as you like your today, your top favorite three markets, what are they? I know you mentioned a lot of Midwestern states, but are there particular three markets where you guys are focusing a lot of your time and energy?
Yeah. So I literally just closed on a property last week in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, which is a suburb
Hmm.
of Nashville. Really, really great area. So this one's going to be an Airbnb. So what I like to look for is properties that I can buy and hold long term. It could be a short term, midterm, or 30, 60, 90 days, or a long term property. And what I do is I find the area and the property and figure out which one fits. But here's the key: I will not buy a short-term property that I could not rent and make money for in long term. Because let's say the world goes very, very bad again and there's nobody traveling. Well, you need to be able to rent it long term. Now, areas, here's a couple cities that I really have found. In fact, my students, we had a coaching call, I think it was last week, and I had three students, literally three students in a row, and they had no idea they were each in the same area. Birmingham, Alabama. They were just, it's like a fish in a barrel. Like they're just plucking out so many properties out of there. That's been really good. I personally just bought it, like I said, in Tennessee. I've also seen Memphis. Memphis is tough. You'd need a good
Yeah.
property manager because it's a rough market. But one of my students literally just bought 6 duplexes in a package deal from an investor. He's going to be making like $5,000 a month on all these properties in passive income. So let's see, Alabama. We have Birmingham, Alabama. Memphis, Tennessee is really good. Another really good one is in Ohio. Dayton, Ohio has been really good, and Canton. These smaller cities.
Hmm.
Cleveland's not bad, but it's a big city. A lot of crime too in that area. But you get a little further out, some good cities that have really good properties there too.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Memphis, and I've actually got personal experience many years back in Memphis, and we've owned properties in pretty much the entire eastern half of the country, and so lots of those markets that you just made mention of there, Memphis being the one that really sticks out. There's something that I've learned over time, and while you can make a lot of cash flow in those markets, I think it all comes down to how difficult. There's like a difficulty priority stack of that cash flow, right? Like, how
Oh,
much
totally.
brain damage has to go into actually making that money. And then what's the exit plan? And because like ultimately in a Memphis type of market, like, appreciation is pretty much out the window. I mean, like, it's just, you truly are buying those deals for cash flow. There's a really good chance that 20 years from now, those duplexes probably won't be worth much more than what they are today. And I shouldn't say that, but I will say that I owned there 15 years ago, and the stuff that sells today is literally what I was paying for it 15 years ago. So it just really, it
It's cash
a
flow.
no
You're right. It's
appreciation
cash
market
flow.
whatsoever. If anything, maybe a loss of value in some occasions. But um, yeah, so because we've owned a lot of challenging stuff over the years, and we've done lots of heavy turnarounds. Maybe purchased in not so great areas of town. And what I've found is that you can change, you could buy a banged up property, property that's been just neglected. You can buy something that's just, it's horrible, but as long as it's in a good area, good part of town, good school districts, you can fix all the bad portion of it. But if you buy a property that's halfway decent, looks like a great opportunity, but it's in a bad part of town, it's in the wrong side of town, the growth is going away from it, the school districts aren't all that great, like you can't fix that. And I've just found that today our business model is very different now. We won't even, I don't care how good the deal looks on paper or how much cash flow it could potentially make. We just steer clear because we found that a lot of those Memphis type of properties or just deals tend to drain a large portion of our resources and prohibit us from doing maybe the better deals that might come along. And so anyway, that's my personal experience with some of the more challenging areas, not just Memphis, but just other areas like a Memphis or parts of town that might be like a Memphis. Life is too short. I've already got enough gray hairs. I don't need any more of them.
Well, I've found a way, and I'm not against. I completely am with you, but I found a way, or at least figured out a way that I and my students have been able to mitigate those problems. Like I don't want to manage a property. I absolutely do not want to manage a property. But what I do is I find the right property managers, and I have backups. Meaning, if that one property manager falls off the rails and they do bad, then I have a backup person. But I do not invest in an area if I do not find a good property manager. That's like bar none. I don't do it unless somebody's going to tell me that they are going to be able to manage the property. Now, here's the great thing that I love about cash flow. I'll be completely honest, Kevin, I do not invest for appreciation, like at all. I don't even care about appreciation until I sell it. But here's the thing. I have 4 kids, and praise the Lord, my wife just gave birth to our 5th child last week. So we have 5 children. I'm literally
Yeah.
going to be giving these properties to my kids now because I like appreciation. Don't get me wrong, but I love cash flow. That's how I feed my family. That's how I become financially
I'm the same
independent.
way. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm the same way. It's got to have cash flow. Like you first and foremost got to have cash flow, but ultimately it's got to be in an area that I feel like it's
Oh,
this is
totally.
just I'm not saying your business is wrong, mine's right, or your students are
Oh,
wrong and I'm
totally.
right.
Yeah.
I like the idea to know that an area is going to improve over time because inevitably appreciation is icing on the cake. You can't bank on it until the day that you can actually take it to the bank, right? But I want to know that inevitably that time, if I do my job right and run the property on a annual by year by year basis, and I run it well, get good tenant base, that inevitably it's just going to improve over time because the area is improving and growing and this, that, and the other. And ultimately, along with all that comes appreciation. But again, for us, it's icing on the cake as well. Surely don't bank on it when we're underwriting a deal. It's all got to be about what is the cash flow, what's the opportunity at present time that I can truly bank on.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. I'm the same way. And I would suggest too, people think about, you should think of playing Monopoly when you're buying, investing in real estate. If you buy a house and you're starting at the cheapest and you just have cash flow coming in, well, you want to graduate into larger, better areas, better properties, multifamily, hotels. Like you want to graduate. Like you could start someplace small and get a lesser property that you probably would not have bought. But what I love about cash flow, when I buy single family homes, I have 30 plus properties now. When I wanted financial freedom, I thought, okay, if I buy one house that makes me a minimum of $250 a month, well, that is $3,000 a year in passive income. And I thought, wow, if I just scale that up, 10 properties is $2,500 a month. That is $30,000 a year. 20 properties is $60,000 a year, $5,000 a month. And that's just the minimum. I have some properties making me $1,000, $1,500. If you do long-term, short-term, or midterm, you're going to make even more money. I just saw the writing on the wall that I could get financial freedom when I invest for cash flow. But then again, I love appreciation because that's more equity that I could then pull out in a cash out refinance, buy another property, and then make more money. So that's a great thing about real estate investing. There's so many ways to do it, and there's so many right ways. There's plenty of wrong ways, don't get me wrong, but there's plenty of right ways to do it. And it's what everybody's risk tolerance is, what their goals, their strategies are, even their finances. You can figure out a way to actually become financially independent in any one of those regards.
Yeah. I'm going to back up a little bit. You'd mentioned, that that you do long-term, midterm, and short-term rentals, but you'll never do a short-term or midterm rental unless it's got to be able to pencil out and kind of carry its own weight as a long-term rental. But again, I guess
Yes.
midterm and short-term is kind of again icing on the cake, right? Like if you can generate more revenue by doing it in that manner versus the long-term, great. And then if you got to fall back to the long-term, it still makes a lot of sense. So I guess curious as to what different resources you guys utilize and what type of boxes have to be checked in order to make that determination of something that would have been maybe looked at as a long-term rental but might make a very viable midterm or short-term rental. Are there different resources that you guys use to say, man, like the demand for short terms in this area is absolutely booming, or for midterms is absolutely booming, we're going to go that route first instead of going the long-term route, and if that doesn't work out, we'll go to plan B?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. And the reason why is because most people, when they get into Airbnb or short-term properties, they listen to these TikTok gurus and these, Instagram gurus, and they say, "Oh, I bought two properties. They're in like Hawaii, and they're making me $10,000 a month and all that." Those people are going to eventually get hurt, in my opinion, just because they way overpaid for these properties. And it's been a booming economy for 14 years now, since 2008. And I remember I started investing in 2006. When there was a crash, I'm not saying there will be, it looks like a correction's coming or we're in a correction, but when there's a bad economy, my goodness, there was so many people that got laid off. There's so many people that got fired, so many people, investors that went bankrupt. And I remember hotels in 2008, they were going bankrupt. Like they were losing money because nobody was traveling. So what I'm looking for is not big cities. Okay, so if you're thinking of where I just bought for a short-term property, I could long-term rent it and make $300 a month in passive income, but I'm going to short-term rent it and make $1,500 a month in passive income. But it's a suburb. It's a little bit further out. It's about 25 minutes away from Nashville. Most of these TikTok gurus, they're going to say, go into Nashville and buy there. Go into Orlando. Go to Hawaii. Go to these big, we're going to be spending millions of dollars. Now, that's not bad, but when it's a bad economy, that's going to be bad. What I love to look for is these secondary markets that have a lot of people, let's say 50,000 population or more inside there, but it's not like in Nashville where prices are just exorbitantly high. And then here's the great thing. A lot of people think short-term properties are just for travel and just for destination like Disneyland and all that sort of stuff. No, I go and we use Airbnb now. Let's say there's a graduation or there's a wedding we got to go to. We got to visit family. We use Airbnb all over the place. So we look at smaller markets that are outside of the bigger market. Let's give you an example. Again, Nashville. Nashville has so many, it's so saturated. It's literally going to burst, in my opinion, but it's so saturated with short-term properties. But these smaller markets, there's Clarksville is just north of there, maybe another 30 minutes away. That's doing really well short-term wise. Murfreesboro there's so few inventory in short-term properties in Murfreesboro that it's by far going to. So I look for inventory in these, I guess the word is tertiary, like secondary markets outside of big cities, because people have to live there too and travel to there as well.
Is there, do you just go to Airbnb, or is there a separate resource that actually, documents all that inventory?
Airbnb is one really good one. AirDNA.
That's the one I was thinking of.
AIRDNA.
Yep.
Yes. AirDNA is really, really good. But honestly, here's the thing. Zillow, AirDNA, Airbnb, they're all really, really good. Redfin, Trulia, but they're all databases. They're all just companies that they're selling all this information. Who I trust, those are the experts that work on the ground that are literally doing it every single day. Those are my property managers, contractors, mortgage brokers. So when I find a good city, let's say I use Airbnb, Zillow, Redfin, and AirDNA to find a city, then I set that information aside and then I build my team, build the business. And I find a property manager who is literally doing the work, because they're the ones going to be ongoing managing it. And they're going to make sure that I do it right. In fact, this one that I just bought, we're turning to an Airbnb. They're changing out the locks. They're literally doing everything. I just call them up and say, hey, ready, set, go. And they take care of everything. And so that's the great thing about when you build the business, you have the experts there. So you utilize those online databases and everything to get you to where you are confident in this. I want to do more research, find the right property managers, realtors, inspectors, all that sort of stuff. Then you have the experts do all the work for you.
What's the difference in cost of property management from a short term to a midterm to a long term? I know kind of the base with the short or with the long term is probably ranges from like 5 to 7%, depending on the area. But how about midterm and then short term? Obviously, there's a little bit more turnover with those other business models. And so is it typically a higher percentage base of gross revenues?
So each city is going to be different.
Okay.
Each area
Hmm.
is generally going to be different, and it's all indicative of other property managers. So in every city, you don't expect it to be the same. But I'll give you a quick example. In Murfreesboro, I have a property manager. He charged 15%. 15%, and he takes that's just for short term, takes care of everything. And 15% is actually really, really good because I have some areas where it's 25%, like Phoenix. 25%. I'm like, how do you charge 25%? That's just so ridiculously high, especially when you're making a good amount of money. So each area is different. My suggestion to figure out how much you're going to be paying, like long term, I'll get back to the quick thought. Long term in Murfreesboro, where I bought my property, it's probably, I think it was like 10%, but
Okay.
short term,
Yeah.
15%. And
Hmm.
what's great is they do all the work. Now, another city like Phoenix, it's going to be 10% for long term. It's going to be 25% for short term. It's just
Hmm.
indicative of the other, I guess, competition of who was doing the property management.
And what's as far as like the short term, what's considered into that 25% or that 15%, whatever that percentage is? Does that also include housekeeping, or is that a separate charge on top of the
Separate
uh
charge, yeah. So they
okay,
they
okay.
they manage it. They send a crews in, but as far as paying
Yeah,
for the
got it.
cleaning, no, you pay extra on top of that.
So you probably like what like on a short-term rental, like your effective percentage for the property management side probably ends up being closer to, I mean, if your base is 15%, once you factor in housekeeping and other just minor repairs and maintenance here and there that pop up, then I'm sure there's project management fees or construction project management fees and things like that they tack on, admin fees. Is it what, like another 5% on top or 7%
I'd
on
say at
top
most
typically?
10%. I'd
Okay.
say the
Okay.
most, like I'm a conservative person. Like if I'm going to run my rent in comp so I can see how much I rent it for, if the highest for long term is like $1,800 is the top, but $1,500 is the lowest, I take the lowest because I want to be
Got it.
surprised on the good end that I make more money. Same thing with the expenses. I always overestimate my expenses. So, but yeah, I would say at most 10% on top of it.
Got it. Got it. Curious as to with the fluctuation in rates, volatility in the market over the past like year and a half. I mean, obviously, we're starting to see some stability in mortgage rates. Maybe I shouldn't talk too soon, but just I'm curious as to how that's if at all impacted your business. Have acquisitions slowed? Have they increased because maybe you found some distressed situations? Just curious as to how you're navigating the waters.
So I love, and I'll say this, and people want, I'll explain it. I love that interest rates are going up. I'm so excited that interest rates are going up for many different reasons. Number one, it's pricing out so much competition. And who's competition? Regular homeowners. For me, residential 4 units and below, they're priced out of the competition, or their competition is priced out because it's way too expensive for them at these price points. Now, but here's the great thing. The reason why I love interest rates going up is because, and you'll completely get this, Kevin, I don't pay the interest on any of my properties. I don't pay my mortgage. I don't pay my taxes. I don't pay for repairs. I don't pay for insurance. I don't pay for property management. I don't have to get a job to pay those things. My tenants pay for those things. So what I do is I account for all those expenses, especially mortgage and interest. I don't care if it's 12%, 15% interest, as long as that expense is accounted for before I buy the property and I make a minimum of $250 a month. That's the minimum. Remember, we get $1,000, $1,500 depending on what we do. I account for that expense before I buy the property, and then I buy the property. The tenants pay for that. Now, the money comes into me and I pay all those bills, but I don't have to get a job for that. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No, understood. I mean, obviously, there's still a challenge associated with rates going up and just the cost of money going up, where I don't think home prices have necessarily adjusted too much yet, which is the
The,
which is
the
the interesting dilemma.
the key to that is there's two things. Number one, getting the price lower, because the price lower gets their mortgage payments lower, which makes you more passive income. But in doing that, honestly, what it comes down to is putting in lots of offers. If I had some students, they'll put in one offer a month. I'm like, that's not enough. Like one offer a month, especially if you're trying to capture equity. That's another thing we do, try to capture equity when you buy the property. But what accurate, like the most successful students, what they do is they put in at least one a day in offers in to get the good deals. My one student who got 6 duplexes just like 2 weeks ago, he was putting in literally like 5 offers a day. Now it's not through one realtor, it's through a seller's realtor, or he found an investor that wants to sell, or a property manager that he's putting in through lots of different ways. But you have to put in lots of deals to get the price lower because you're capturing the equity. And people, one quick last thing I'll say, people ask me, well, Dustin, how do you know how much you should pay for the property? Because, it's not comps. I don't go off of comps. How I know how much to pay for a property is how much cash flow I will make. And if I will not make cash flow on a property, let's say the X dollar amount for the purchase of the property, and I will not make cash flow. Well, that means my purchase price is too high. I have to lower the purchase price so that my mortgage comes down, so that my income goes up. So the property is only worth what's going to make me a minimum of $250 a month after I calculate expenses from the mortgage, deduct all that. And that's what the property's worth. That's the top dollar for me. And then I try to offer lower so I can negotiate them down to my spot or below that.
When you're running those calculations, minimum $250 a month, how much are you budgeting for as far as a vacancy cost and potential repairs necessary when there's a turnover?
So repairs and capital expenses, I kind of bundle them together. It's usually 5% of the rent for both of those. So I just put them together, say 10% that I save up. And so capital expenses and repairs bundle those together. Now, the vacancy factor, I don't want to just guess. I want to know. So I talk to my property manager as well as the realtors in the area and ask them what the vacancy factor that they've seen. I've seen normally it's probably about an average 8%. If you're going to say, hey, Dustin, just give me a number to go for vacancy factor, 8% is going to be pretty good. It's going to be pretty decent. You're not going to be killed, if it's a little bit higher. And it's going to be really happy if it's lower than that.
Memphis, it might be 15.
It might be.
Maybe higher, maybe even higher than that. But
like I said, it's the property manager. Like if you have a good property manager, like my students, and every time I have the students say, I want to invest in Memphis, I say, find at least 3 property managers that you know and that you want to work with, because you have a backup. Because last thing you want is a property that's not going to be making you money because you have nobody to manage it. So you want to have 3 property managers that, like, number one, and then 2 backups. And then with that, you make sure that your property manager, they're going to be they're managing it for hopefully years. And so hopefully they're going to be giving you really good information. And so vacancy factor is a great question. How much, or like, what's the vacancy factor in this area, these properties?
Given the mass influx of the average folk, the W-2 employee getting into Airbnb as a business, right? Just buying one or two over the last couple of, really the last like 4 years. It really obviously ramped up with COVID. There's certain areas that are just inundated and oversaturated with Airbnb units, and now folks can travel internationally again, and people aren't doing the staycations as much like they were during the height of COVID. And so has there been any type of distress or fallout in certain markets? I'm thinking of like the Gatlinburg, Tennessees, or the Pigeon Forge. And I'm sure there's a bunch of others like that they literally are just oversaturated with rental cabins and mountain units and this, that, and the other. Have you seen distress? And if you haven't so far, do you think there's distress coming down the road?
So have not seen it yet. Other than prices are coming down, like their Airbnb owners are having to compete more.
Rental prices, like their actual rental prices are coming down.
Nightly, yes, rental prices, yeah. So you look on an Airbnb, okay, $150 a night, where it used to be $200 a night. So they're having to be more aggressive in lowering price because there's more competition. So I have not seen any big change yet, but I see the prices coming down. Now, here's the big thing that I see coming here in the future. People they've been way overspending on buying these properties because like I said, they're following these TikTok and Instagram gurus telling them how to do it. When in fact, my suggestion or my thought is they're leading them down the wrong path, because they're thinking it's always going to be a booming economy. Well, one day, I don't know when, one day it will be a bad economy. And what will happen is they won't be able to get the rents that they were hoping, total dollar amount per night, and it won't be rented nearly as much. Then they're going to have these huge mortgage payments. I kid you not, in Phoenix, just Phoenix alone, I want to say there's like 6,000 Airbnb, maybe more, 7,000 Airbnbs in like the small Phoenix area, or as big as Phoenix is. But those used to all go to hotels. Like people would go to hotels instead of Airbnb, but now there's so many more, and they're coming on. So the Super Bowl came recently, and there were places that were not even rented. You would think Super Bowl, people would want to stay there. No, there were places that were not even rented because there were so many. People were
Wow.
hoping to get
Yeah.
$3,000 a night. They had to lower it to like $1,500 a night because there's so much. So my prediction, I don't know when, but eventually it's going to be a day of reckoning that you're going to see a lot of foreclosures on these very expensive homes that were Airbnb because they can't make their mortgage payment and they realize they got to walk away.
Well, I think you've also got some other areas. Vegas comes to mind. I'm sure there's a lot of others that
Oh
actually
yeah.
put in some regulatory, restrictions on Airbnbs and having to have a license and only have a certain allocation of licenses. And I forget, like a large percentage of the existing Airbnbs at present time are operating illegally, right? And like they don't necessarily have the manpower, the task force to enforce it, but they're working on on getting to that point to where they can actually start shutting down these illegally run Airbnbs. And so I'm sure there's a lot of other states that have done similar things or will follow suit. And so like that, it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. Time will tell. But like that's those types of areas are the ones I'm wondering, how does that really end? 5 years down the road from now. But
Let me
one
give
thing I
you, so if any, I'll quickly share.
yeah, go
If
ahead.
anybody's in that situation where they have that issue, like, oh no, legislation's coming where I can't do Airbnb, a quick thought is number one, buy a little outside of the big cities like Nashville or Las Vegas, Nevada, like buy a little bit outside so you're not in that city. So that's number one. But number two, read the law. If it's less than 30 days, like you can't do, short term, then do 30 days or more. Like you could still do that, midterm type of stay. So there's a couple nuances, more things, but we don't need to get into it. But if you're stuck, then you could probably find a way to actually get around it.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. One thing I have noticed, this is me personally, I used to really enjoy Airbnbs and we still stay. We actually literally just stayed at one in Sedona, my wife and I, a week or two ago. And so, and it was actually, it's a very clean unit, well furnished. But I will say the one thing I've noticed, this is both Airbnb and Uber, both of them over the last, since COVID started through COVID. And I think this also pertains to even like, customer service at restaurants. And like, I think there's been a bunch of trickle down effects as a result of COVID, but the quality of like just the fit and the finishes, cleanliness of units. I would say that I've had more bad experiences in the last 3 years at Airbnbs, even very expensive high end stuff. More bad experiences than I've had good experiences. And bad experiences doesn't mean like everything's broken, like they haven't cleaned the floors, but it's like I expect a lot more, right? Like if we're
Well,
spending
especially
1,000, 1,500 bucks a night for a really nice unit, I don't expect there to be hair in the bathroom. I don't expect the walls to have like black handprints on them, windows to be dirty, towels to be like not nice. Like the towels, like they needed to be replaced 2 years ago. Like they're just old and dingy. Like Walmart towels, like that type of thing. I felt like the quality has and the standards have definitely dropped quite a bit. Uber, the same thing. I've definitely had way more bad Uber experiences in the last couple of years than I've had good ones, even with upgrading from the Uber X to the premium or even the black car. It just I feel like I've just the quality expectation, the standards have just become so much lower than what I recall them being. Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm remembering
oh,
incorrectly.
I'm
But
I'm 100% with you. In fact,
I go
it's
to
just so
hotels more
saturated
now.
now.
I go to more
Exactly.
hotels now because the hotels are actually they're nicer. Like I know what to expect.
And I'll add one thing too. Airbnb, they're charging so much more, as well as the cleaning
That
fee.
too, yeah.
Two
Well,
hundred
yeah,
dollars. Like you're going to stay there two nights, and they're going to
that's right.
$200.
It doesn't make
It's
sense. Yeah,
just, it
unless
doesn't
you're
make
going to say a
sense.
minimum of like 3, 4, 5 nights. Yeah, you're right. Once they factor in the cleaning fee and whatever other taxes and surcharges are there, like it's just the cost per night. You could literally stay
And
in probably a 4-star plus hotel in whatever market that's in.
and the big thing that I'm seeing is that this is it's there's so much inventory for Airbnb out there. Same thing with Uber. So like Uber and Lyft, they're having to compete. So there's so much supply out there that the quality is starting to get less and less and less. So if you're doing it right, my suggestion is, like I said, make sure you're doing it long term first. If you can long term and make money, then go with short term, because then you have so much, like people charging $200 to stay one night for a cleaning fee. It's because they way overpaid. They don't have, their expenses are so high. If you do it right, you don't have to have these exorbitant fees because you have so much less in expenses.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And Dust, I really appreciate your time. Appreciate your insight coming on here today. I want to be conscious of the time here. We're getting towards the end. I want to give you an opportunity to, point the listeners for those that want to learn more about you, your business, your resources that you offer, what it is you do. Where's the best place they could track you down and find a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a real estate investing course I love to go give out for free. Do you mind if I share it
Sure.
with everybody?
No, absolutely.
Awesome. So I'll give you my course for free. Literally, people just invest just from this free course. If you text the word rental, RENTAL, rental to 33777, rental to 33777, or go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course, all one word /free course. I'll literally give it to you. Find an area anywhere in the country to invest, how to build the business right, how to make sure you're making money and passive income, and hopefully become financially independent. You can also find me on my podcast, the Master Passive Income Podcast. And Kevin, it's gonna be great to have you on the show. I'm gonna love learning everything about what you're doing as well. So my podcast is literally like 80% is just a solo show, me just teaching how to do this. So I'm glad to have you on. You can even find me on Instagram. I love getting DMs. I love helping people. The Dustin Heiner, so THE Dustin Heiner. TikTok, I'm on there as well. But Kevin, I'm not that arrogant. Being the Dustin Heiner, it's the only handle I can come up with. But all
That's all right.
all these
Mine's
different
mine's
ways.
mine's real Kevin Bupp.
I was going to use real, but I was like, that's an extra letter. So
Yeah,
I was like,
fair
let's
enough.
just use the. But no, I really just love, and just like you, Kevin, my goal is to really just help people. Just like the reason why you have your podcast, the reason why I invest. Like I love that investing gets me around awesome people like you, and then everybody that we can connect with and help. It's just a blessing. That's why also one last quick thing. I created the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference. It's literally a no sales pitch conference. Most conferences I've gone to for real estate, they say run to the back, and it's normally $1 million or $1,000 a day. I wanted something opposite of that. So it's literally a conference where we just help people to invest. No sales pitch. So the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, REWBCON.com, rubcon.com. But I just love helping people to invest in real estate. But I really appreciate you having me on the show.
No, I appreciate you coming on, Dustin. And guys, I'll put all that info down in the show notes. And Dustin, it's been a pleasure. Appreciate you coming on. And I look forward to being a guest on your show here in a couple of weeks.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Alrighty, guys, that's all we have for this week's show. So until we meet again next week, this is your host, Kevin Bupp, wishing you huge success. Take care now.